So it turns out the United States government, well, actually the military, has been caught red-handed using illegal psychological warfare techniques against our own citizens. Well, actually, our leaders, our senators. Whenever they travel over to Afghanistan to try and develop their own viewpoint, to see with their own eyes what's going on with Afghanistan, to decide whether they should continue to fund it, whether they should give more funding, whether they should send more troops over, then they're hounded by a group that's received hundreds of thousands of dollars in training on how to use propaganda techniques and lies in order to convince enemies to do what they want them to do. So this isn't surprising to me, because it's something that I thought has been going on for a long time. I mean, I figured there's one of two options. Either our leaders are being bribed by the military-industrial complex, it could be private contractors or the actual military or CIA. Maybe they're getting bribed, or they're just retarded enough to believe these lies. And it turns out it's the latter. They're stupid enough to believe the propaganda brought by the military. But in all fairness, I don't know how good these liars are. Obviously, they receive a lot of training. They're good at what they do, so they might be pretty convincing in their lies. I just don't know. But the sad thing about this story, what's really kind of pathetic. I mean, I'm glad that it's out there because, like I said, this story isn't surprising, but it's the first time in at least recent history that the Army has been found. It's substantiated that they're using illegal propaganda techniques on our leaders to perpetuate wars. That's a pretty big deal that it's actually substantiated. But what's sad about it is it's coming from the Rolling Stone. And that's sad to me because it shouldn't be the job of the Rolling Stone to do investigative journaling that's controversial. Rolling Stone should be like the equivalent of MTV for magazines. But instead, they're actually doing the dirty work. Well, organizations like the New York Times or the Washington Post are sycophants to anything the U.S. government does. They just play along with it. They just buy right into it. Maybe they're victims of this psychological warfare too. I just don't know. But, it's really pathetic. And it's real sad that the media plays along with these psychological operations in the military, and then the American people are actually dumb enough to believe it. I mean, I was talking to a friend just the other day, and she's telling me how the soldiers in Afghanistan are over there fighting for our freedom. I'm like, in what twisted world does that make? How are they fighting for our freedom in Afghanistan? She goes, well, they started the war. We have to finish. You know who we're fighting in Afghanistan, right? It's the Taliban. What the hell did Taliban have to do with 9/11? Oh, Osama bin Laden was Taliban. I'm like, no, he wasn't. This is as stupid of an argument as saying that Osama bin Laden was working with Saddam Hussein. It's just not true. But that's what they try to push. That's what they did push on the American people back when they wanted to warmonger and start the Iraq war too. So this is the same thing that they use every single time they want to start a war. It's this Glenn Beck type of guilt by association. I guess they put up two pictures on a blackboard, and the American public's both enough to go, well, they are brown. That must mean they're working together. They're both brown. Whew. But it's really sad that not only was this war a lie. I've said this before. Not only was it a lie, and the Taliban didn't have nothing to do with 9/11. Why are we at war fighting the Taliban for 10 years, and people are saying they want to be there forever, even though they know it's not winnable? We're just going to have permanent stations and be there forever. Why do we even care? What did the Taliban do to us? Not only is a lie, but they knew from the start that it's unwinnable. How did they know that it's unwinnable? Because the CIA was, okay, let me take it back a step. This war has been fought before. The same war in Afghanistan been fought before, not too long ago, and with the same type of technology. Back in the 80s in the Russian-Afghan war, except we were playing on the other side. We didn't have troops over there, but the CIA was running the intelligence for the Mujahideen, knowing most of their moves, giving them money, giving them arms, not really training them so much, but we knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew that Afghans were going to win because they knew exactly what it takes to win, to defeat an invading force in Afghanistan. And all it takes is persistency and keeping going with little pop-up attacks. Just keep blowing stuff up every now and then. Keep running and killing a few of their soldiers. As long as you're costing them billions of dollars, making them bleed through the nose, then they're eventually going to fail. They're eventually going to be forced to leave. So we knew that's all it takes. And what do? Go in there and get on the other side of the war and want to do it. Well, CIA isn't stupid, okay? They're crazy, but they're not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. They knew that it would be... Well, see, it's not completely an unwinnable war. It is an unwinnable war, but that doesn't necessarily mean you lose a war. Russia wouldn't have lost the war if they just decided to stay there forever. So that's what we're going to do. They just want to stay there forever and not lose the war, but they know it's not winnable either. That's the whole plan. And why? Well, there's a lot of reasons. People say it's because of the mineral deposits in the soil. No, that's not true. Just because there's minerals in the soil doesn't mean that it's profitable to get them out. You have to find them. It costs trillions to get trillions. That's not what they were really going for. Oil pipeline, that might have been up there on the list. But really, it comes down to money. Think about it. The U.S. hasn't had a real war before Afghanistan since Vietnam. You might say, well, what about the Gulf? What about the first Gulf War? That was kind of a joke. Everybody knows that. It was like 4 days long. How many shots were even fired? How many people... that doesn't count. That was like an invasion that lasted about a day. So, really, when you're at peace for 10 years, the public doesn't really care. We're at peace for 20 years, 30 years. Then the public starts to say, why are we spending over $1 trillion a year on a military that just sits there? Why? So, really, they just couldn't let the military sit there and rot. They have to create some new conflict to increase their money and increase their power. And I'm sure all the private contractors that are making billions of dollars off the war don't have a problem with that either. And the news corporations, they love war too. It's great for their ratings. So anyway, it's kind of pathetic that not only have our American people been lied to, but our leaders have been lied to as well. And just for some evidence to show you that this war is unwinnable, I've showed this on my channel before too, but it's a list of the chronological IED bombings in Afghanistan since the start of the war. Well, almost the start of the war. And this information comes from the Afghan war logs, which was released by WikiLeaks. But the green dots are explosions where nobody was hurt. The yellow ones are somebody injured, and the red ones are somebody killed. And it starts out pretty slow. You know, the Taliban was kind of knocked on their ass. They didn't know what to do. They weren't, their organization, their funding, their weapons, they didn't have that all set up. They didn't have an infrastructure and training set up. But after the war got going, they got more organized, getting more money, getting more recruits. Then it just started to get out of hand, and it's only escalating. It's getting worse and worse and worse. It's not getting better. And this was even before the troop surge. Here comes the troop surge coming up about now. It's just getting worse. So everybody, see, it's getting way worse. Everybody knows this war is unwinnable. Everybody's been there who hasn't been subjected to psychological warfare. So now it's time to move on and realize the truth that this war is unwinnable and it's pointless. It's a waste of life. It's a waste of money. And what's really surprising is some Republicans, even some mainstream Republicans, not just Ron Paul, are starting to believe this. The third place winner at the CPAC poll, which was Johnson from the governor of New Mexico, he believes the Afghan war should be ended and is pointless and a waste of money. He just sees it from an economic standpoint. He doesn't really care about anything else. He just says, what do we gain from it and how much are we spending? So, you know, I don't agree with all his points, but I agree with him on that. And also, he thinks that weed should be legalized. I mean, that's from a cost-benefit perspective as well. So I respect his reasoning on that. And also, Mike Huckabee has come out in the last couple of days saying that he thinks the Afghan war is pointless. So it's real interesting that now mainstream Republicans are starting to seriously question this war and this propaganda technique of, oh, we have this new campaign, the tides are starting to turn. They come out and say this every damn week. It's been 10 years. It's like the people of Egypt. You know, they always had hope when Mubarak would come out in the past. There's going to be all these reforms. Everything's going to change. And people go, oh, yes, things are finally starting to change. Now we have elections. Oh, wait, they're all rigged elections. Nothing changed. It just worse. That's what they're doing every time. And not only are the American people starting to wake up to this, but apparently our leaders are too. And now that it's been substantiated fact that the military is lying to our leaders, I think it's going to open up a lot more people's eyes. So hopefully this war won't go on forever.